Yep, this project looks pretty tough. I don't know how any of you guys are gonna make it. I feel like everybody's like has hit the road ends here, and none of you guys will graduate. I'm just kidding, guys. What's up? I thought I'd join you and kind of go over what this project is, as well as the general guidelines on how to do that, and show you a bit of an example of how to get this project done. But I hope you guys are doing well and are excited as I am to continue with this online distance learning. Without further ado, though, let's talk about this project. So the guidelines are all right here. You have all of this stuff in RenWeb, and here's a basic introduction of what you're going to be doing. So you know how we've been talking about federal bureaucracy and how there's a White House with the president at top, and then there's 15 departments underneath him who do all of the grunt work, if you will, depending on what their department is. Well, instead of me going through every single one of them and saying like, hey, this is the current Secretary of State, this is how many people are in the State Department, this is how much money they have, etc., 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 I thought it'd be more advantageous to kind of split up the responsibility to you guys and give you guys one department each, and you do the research on that department. That way you only have to worry about one department instead of 15 departments, and you kind of all will learn from each other from this process eventually, if you ever get back in the classroom, so I can show these. But anywho, let's get going though. With that being said, there's two caveats I need to make very, very clear. One, that nobody can do the example I'm about to give you, the Department of Agriculture. That one is going to be eliminated from the options just because I don't want someone to literally just copy what I did. Two, you must email me what your decision is as far as your department, and you must get verification of my approval of that department. And it's a first come, first served policy. So as much as you'll be picking your departments, at the end of the day, if that department has already been chosen, then you will not get that department. I would even strongly suggest when you email me, say like, hey, Mr. Shoens, I would love to do the Department of Defense, but if that's not available, I'd love to do the Department of Homeland Security. But if that's not available, I'd love to do the Department of Veterans Affairs. And if that's not available, I'll cry myself to sleep at night. Option 4 will never be available. So with that being said, you got to email me and I will send you back verification saying that this is your topic. If you just decide to be a rogue and do whatever department you want, I'll just give you a 0 and you can just do the project properly at that point, and you're literally wasting your time. So get your approval from me. Nobody does the Department of Agriculture, and let's just get right to it. So I kind of have all the format here. It's going to be a PowerPoint presentation or Google Slides or something of that nature. And what you're going to be doing is basically the outlines right here. You can literally go number to number and literally make your slides based on that. Like your first slide should have a title with the symbol and all that stuff. Again, I'll show you an example in a second. And you literally just fill out the information you need for all of these different things. Side note, works cited. Make sure you're citing on these PowerPoint slides. Plagiarism still is a thing. It's more contagious than COVID-19 as tested by English teachers and professors nationwide. I will give you no credit if you do not cite this properly, regardless if we're in school or not. That being said, I'm going to show you how to cite it properly. There's many ways to do it properly, but I'll show you how I want it. And honestly, most of the information you'll find for these departments are going to be on their department's website. So it's going to be just more of repetitive citing rather than different citing. As you'll see with the example I'll give you. But just remember, citing, citing, citing. Your information can be immaculate in the PowerPoint, but if it's not cited, it's not yours and you get no credit. So make sure you cite it. But anywho, without further ado, so you have these guidelines here. I'm not going to bore you with the details saying like, hey, PowerPoint slide 1. I'd rather show you an example of a previous student's project. Now, that being said, this is a student's project from last year. This is a person who did really, really well on their project. I really wish I knew who the student was, but clearly, as you can see with the giant X right there, there's just no possible way for me to find out who this student is. Oh. Tough expectations, Josh. Anywho, let's move on. So they started off with a title slide with the PowerPoint, and they had their logo and all that different stuff, and they had their citations. And you can notice as they're going through their project here, they started here with the start of the department. We talked about the day it started, talked about any special circumstances that happened when it started. They included a photo. Notice down here they have their citation right here. Long story short, that's how you're citing within a PowerPoint slide. You just make a Word box down there. If you need any help with that, I could show you, just let me know. And you put the citation right there. Now there's other ways of doing this, but this is how I specifically want it for this project, and I find it the most easy. You just copy and paste it from your works cited. Anywho, so they have the start of the department, they have the mission state of the department. Every single one of these departments has a mission statement of some sort. You just have to find it on their website. It's basically like, our goal is this. And every single department has it. It's kind of in the name, but I need it in more formal writing. Again, I can tell from the student that all these pictures were ones that they found on the USDA's website. Make sure you're citing your pictures if you're using stuff outside of where your sources are. Like if you go on Google Images, make sure you cite those images specifically. If you give me a political cartoon, I know it's not on any of those websites, so you kind of get the idea. Moving on, they have the current budget. Now there's two things that they have here. They have a mandatory and discretionary budget. I'm expecting both for this project for all your departments. Long story short, mandatory is what they must spend at all times because they deem it as mandatory, as in life will end if they don't have the funding for it. Discretionary is like the fat they can cut off if there was like a government shutdown or something like that. Every department has something like that. Make sure you put both of them in there. Again, they made a nice pie chart, and this whole PowerPoint is excellent presentation. It's very attractive, which is why this person did a really great job on this. They have their sites, and they have it all cited properly, and they made pie charts, all that different stuff. The information's correct. Anywho, current employment of the department. Now, this isn't job applications. I'm not looking to see how many people are being hired from this department. No. I'm curious of just how many people, rough estimate, you don't have to give me the exact number, work for this department currently. Each department will depend. It just depends which one. If you have like the Department of Defense, that's technically everybody in the military, so you'll have a much bigger number than here. Anywho, moving on, so we have significant sub-departments. So all of these sub-departments here are literally within the Department of Agriculture, but they're just a specific part of it that work on a specific task. I'll give you an example that you might understand. So you have like a Department of Homeland Security, but there's significant sub-departments within Homeland Security, like TSA, like Coast Guard, and various others. Make sure you include the significant ones. Some departments have like a zillion. Use your discretion to decide which ones are important, but some of them literally only have like 4, so list them all. Just depends on what your department is. Main location. All these departments are literally in Washington, D.C. And they have a physical address that you can literally go to. Like if you went on Google Maps, plug it in, and I could walk to it and be at its doorstep. If you went on the DC trip last year, then you saw a lot of them like Department of Blank when we walked past them. So with that being said, I'm looking for the address. If you don't want to get super specific with the numbers, that's a-okay as long as you include like the main road, like this person did here with Independence Avenue. That's a-okay. I realize that they know that it's located in DC, specifically where in DC though. And you just have to do it for their main building, not their sub-departments. Moving on, this person overachieved with their transitions. Again, excellent presentation, so they did really, really well. What they do, so just like a short summary of what they do as far as like, do they inspect food, do they approve of drugs for human consumption, or whatever it may be. It just depends on what your department is. How it affects the average U.S. citizen. So like, how does it affect you? Like being you're an 18-year-old, what do they do for you? Short and sweet. And then finally, they had a professional biography of whoever the secretary is of that department. So they talked about who they were. They talked about how they started, like early career, when they were appointed, who appointed them in that department, what they've done in that department, etc., etc. depending on your department, there might be a really interesting story, because if you know anything about the current president, they have hired and fired a lot of people of their cabinet in the past 4 years. So this depends on what department you're in. If you're like the Department of Education, it's been the same person all 4 years. If you're like the Department of Defense, not so much. So you get the idea. A professional biography, including a picture here. So again, you can find this picture. Literally, if you went on that website right there, I would find that picture right there, as well as where she found this information. Not copied and paste, it's in her own words, but you get the idea. And then at last, she included her work cited. So she did a really good job there. So that being said, guys, that's a little bit of a explanation of kind of an example of what my expectations are. Remember, you guys, to email me whatever your choice is. Include a couple of options in case you don't get your first choice. And first come, first served. And if you have any questions, guys, just let me know. Take care.